Happy fall. If you know me, you know fall is my favorite, and today I'm going to show you this really fun acorn little illustration with the soft pastel brushes that you can get in my newsletter freebie section. So this is a nice rough look that I had fun making, and I just wanted to show you how to do it too. You can pick your favorite palette. I actually give you a lot of free palettes in the freebies as well, so let's go take a look really quick. The link, of course, will be below. So when you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get access with a link and a password to my freebies section, and this is just a growing section of freebies. I think there's a palette in here. We already did a lesson on that one. And if you just go back a ways, there's some more. There's some really great fall palettes there. There's probably a palette there. There's a bunch of brushes and things like that. Go back into this 2021, 2022, and keep going. There's more fall palettes. So definitely grab some of these things and then come down to the pastels and reference photos. This is where you'll get a really great little mini set of my pastel brushes. I have a full set in my chickadee class as well as another class that I have on pastels. And definitely take a look at some of the other stuff that I have here. You'll want to grab potentially some of the Posca pens and Micron pens here if you want to add those sorts of details on top of the pastel. But for now, we're just going to use the pastel set. And then hop over to unsplash.com and just search on acorns just to get an idea of how many different shapes of acorns there are. There's some really short ones, teeny tiny ones. There's really, really long ones too. And if you want to keep a reference photo open for yourself while you're sketching, here's a few in here. These are kind of all the same shape. But having a photo open for yourself while you're sketching is something that you're welcome to do. And I'm not going to show you that in the lesson, but here's some really long ones. But just giving yourself an idea for some shapes, some really long ones with a little kind of rounded top, really very rounded, compared to these shorter ones with this sort of squashed top. Just getting an idea of some different shapes of acorns will be helpful for just kind of having a variety when we sketch our acorns. Here's some with really big caps. So if you look, zoom in, you can see that the cap is almost as tall as the bottom part itself. So that's interesting also. Let's go ahead and open up a canvas. This is 8 by 10, I believe. So think about what size you might want to print this at if you think you might want to print it. Because you can't really upscale in Procreate, so if you make a small canvas and you want to print it big, that would be a problem. You're going to want to start with a big canvas, and then you'll have all sorts of options for printing. But I just think about 8 by 10 or sometimes 11 by 14 common print sizes in America. So wherever you are, just think of a common print size in case you might want to print it someday. So go to your gallery and tap the plus sign and the plus sign again. And whatever dimensions you're used to, I'm going to inches, and for width, I'm going to do 8, and for height, I'm going to do 10, and I always do 300 dpi, and I always use this print color profile. This display P3 is really the best to be viewed on Apple products only, so I don't use it. Tap Create. There we go. Your brush set should be called the Pastels Mini Set, and it should import to the top of your list here. And palettes import to the very bottom of your list. And you can get to it by tapping this palette right here. So I've just selected a nice fall palette that I enjoy, and now I'm going to my Layers menu. And so when I select a palette, I like to return to the disk view. That's just how I do it. I add a bunch of layers to start. That's just how I like to do things. And then I'm going to pick a gray that goes straight across in this disc view. So it's probably around 50%. You can check with value. Yeah, it's at 57%. So I'm a little higher than the middle. And I'm going to this mulch paper brush. You can do the craft paper as well. I'm on a layer at the top, and you can pick a size, and you're going to cover the whole thing in one stroke and duplicate that layer. Then we're going to change one to color burn, and we're going to change one to multiply. So tapping on the N gets you to these blend modes, and then you scroll down to the one. I'm turning the opacity on the multiply layer down. It's very, very gray, but that's the one that's going to show up on lighter colors. All right, so for now, that is all I'm going to do. I'm going to swipe right on both of those and tap group, and you can label that so you remember which brush you used. I'm going to tap that little arrow just to kind of set those aside there. And we really don't know, because we have this solid white background, we really don't know how that texture is really looking. And just for something different, I'm going to change the background color. So let's see, I'm going to go back to this view here. I like the warmer oranges, and then I'm going to pull my white just down a smidge. So hopefully you can find a good, nice fall kind of craft paper type of pastel board type of color that you like. If you want to do the exact color I'm using, I'm at 38 for hue, 18 for saturation, 82 for brightness. And I think that's looking good for the textures. So if you want to test some of your colors on a layer under your textures, you can just pick any brush. I'm going to pick this stick. This is a pastel brush that's kind of like using the pastel on its side like this. If you've used the Nico rule brush, you will know that you'll feel that it's very similar. And you can test out some of your colors that you might want to use and see if you like how much texture is showing up on both light and dark. I'm probably not going to be using too much light. It's only in the details, the little line outlines. So far I think that looks good. And now we're set up and ready to go. I'm going to do a little bit of sketching, sketching out some acorns and leaves without looking at the reference photo. And I think if you follow along with me, you'll be able to do that also. But if you want to grab a reference photo, you can do a split screen with your photos and have it over here to refer to. Or you can go to the wrench tool, canvas, and turn on reference, and then bring in a reference photo like that, right here, tapping image. All right. So my sketch layer can be above or below the texture layers. I'll just go above the texture layers, and I'm going to pick a dark color, and I'll go with the HB pencil just to sketch with. It doesn't matter what you sketch with. And I think I'll start with one in the middle. So with an acorn, if you just kind of come down the side and try to do somewhat symmetrical looking little curves there, and then have a little point here at the bottom. That's all you need to do for the bottom. So you can have them be long, short, wide, all of the variations that we saw. And then for the little cap, we can do a little curve like this, so somewhat flat, but a little bit of a curve. And then have the sides come down a little bit. So the curves on the sides are going to come down a little bit past this point where this curve meets this side. And that'll just look like it's on there, kind of capped on there, like this. So this is where you're going to want to have a variety in your cap shapes as well. So we can come up here, and now we already have a pretty decent looking acorn. You can just come all the way up like this and then put a little top on it. That's it. So we're going to make a sketch of a few acorns around your page. Let's do a long one. Find that middle. Whatever's easiest for you to get this sort of somewhat symmetrical look. You could use the symmetry tool. That will look almost too perfect, so I'm not going to do that. And then I'm going to curve this one down a little bit just to have a little bit of a variety here. And I'm going to just come straight out from the side on this one instead of overlap down here. So straight out, and then maybe have this be one of those tall ones like this. How about a very rounded one, like kind of a chunky one like this? And since this is just the sketch layer, you can play around with the size of these. You can scale them. Scaling up does make things pixelated, but this sketch isn't going to show in the end. So, ooh, that's kind of a funny looking one. I'm not sure I like that shape. I'm going to play around with that shape some more. And how about kind of a normal looking one? For me, I think that it almost just depends on the part of the world you're in. I have never seen these long ones ever. So whatever is normal for you is going to be different for others. And then let's do one more. Let's see. What's another shape I can do? Really, really squattier than this one, like a really wide one like this. Then put the point on it. I don't like how high this one is, but I'm liking the shape. So I'm going to grab it. I'm going to go to the little magic wand on freehand and grab it and move it down. Put my little stem up there. And then this is a good time to shift any of them around or play around with the size of them. You can make them bigger. And I've left some space for some little teeny tiny oak leaves. I'm going to bring all of these down a little bit to have more room up there for the leaves. So get these all situated in their final positions. And then let's make a little oak leaf, little baby oak leaf. So right from one of the tips or wherever you want, you can just have them kind of filling in some gaps. I'm going to make a line, and then that's the main vein of the leaf. And then down here by the stem end, I'm going to make 2 angled shorter lines, and then 2 angled longer lines, and then leave a little bit of stem here. And from a little ways up, I'm going to come out and just kind of curve around all of the little lines that I made. And we'll make a super simple leaf like that. So think about where you're going to want all of your leaves, with longer ones at the top, shorter ones at the bottom. If it's really hard for you to make those, you can duplicate. So you can grab with the little wand here and grab all the way around your leaf, 3-finger swipe down and duplicate. And now you have another one you can move around. You can rotate it, maybe try to make it look a little bit different from that one so it doesn't look like the actual duplicated version. You can flip it and find a new spot for it. And I'm going to overlap my cap a little bit on this one and maybe make it a little bit bigger. And then make my cap a little bit bigger. And that's a separate layer because we did a duplicate, so I'm going to merge those now. Pinch them together to merge those. There's kind of a void down here, so I might want to add another acorn, or maybe move this leaf over and down and then move this whole acorn over, something like that. So you can, since it's the sketch phase, you can really just get it all figured out right now before we start adding color. All right, I think I'm gonna stick with the 3 leaves, and now I am ready to get started. So I like to alpha lock my layer, my sketch layer, so I don't accidentally start illustrating on that layer. And I'm gonna tap on the N and turn it to multiply. That means that when I'm working on layers underneath this, I'll be able to see through this sketch layer and also turn the opacity down. I think I might come back and add a little baby acorn right here. So I'm going to take alpha lock off, and I'm just erasing where my sketch sort of overlapped that leaf there. So I know the leaf is going to be on top. And now I'm ready to go forward with all of my fun pastels. So we're going to color in all of the bases, and then on a different layer we're going to color all the caps and so on. So to get that really rough pastel look, I had a lot of fun using the side stick pastel and being really messy with it and then erasing. So that is what we're going to do. I'm going to come down here to, oops, I'm going to alpha lock that layer again. I'm going to come down pretty low. I always like to leave an empty layer at the bottom. And I think I'm going to keep my caps all darker, like dark brown, dark purple, dark blue. So I'm thinking about other colors for the nut part. So I guess I'll start with orange. And I'm not thinking about realistic colors, of course. And let's go to the side stick pastel on a pretty big size. And just have some fun playing around with some colors. Maybe this lighter. I'm also looking at how these colors are interacting with the background as well. I want there to be some good contrast. I'm trying to make sure there's not a Christmassy look going on in any of these. Sometimes picking colors can be very, what's a good word to describe it? It's kind of paralyzing. So I hope that you're able to pick some fun colors without having to worry too much about what it looks like in the end. And I am going to just think about where the colors meet as well. I don't want to get rid of all this texture. And I'm not talking about the texture layers we added. If we turn those off, you can see this texture, right? This is great texture. If I smudge, I risk losing that texture. Let's tap and hold the smudge brush so that we're on that same brush set, and I can go ahead and keep looking at this side stick pastel for smudging on a smaller size. And I'm leaving my texture layers off just to give you an example. If I'm careful with my smudging, I can maintain some of that texture. So if you, for example, go to this soft pastel and blender brush and you do a little bit too much smudging, you're really just making it look like an airbrush. You're making it look very smooth. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. This blender brush can still maintain some texture if you do some careful swiping with it, but I'm going to stick with the side stick pastel. I'm personally going to smudge these hard edges, but that's just my personal preference for what I want these to look like. I'm not sure I like this pink either, but I can come back later and change that. And I'm just going through, I guess I'm leaving my texture layers off so I can make sure that I'm really maintaining some of the brush texture. I think I want a brighter green on this. So now I'm back over to my brush itself. Ooh, yeah, I like that a lot. And then smudge that a little bit. And I think I want something darker on this one. So I'm going to come to one of my darker orangey colors. There we go. layering up. So spend some time on that and then go tap and hold the eraser. And I've been using this streaky pastel for the eraser, but this is just, I'm going to zoom in and show you the texture. The side stick has this really kind of firm edge, and I don't want my erased edges to have that kind of an edge. So with this streaky one, I can have more of a streaky erased edge. I do not want to spend all my time erasing all this excess. I'm really just focusing on erasing around the edge of the acorn, the nut part. So I'm going to turn my opacity down on my sketch even more so I can barely see it. And then I am coming in with my eraser and having some short, quick strokes that don't give a super hard, firm edge. And once I get all the way around, like that, then I can use the selection tool on freehand, and I can kind of come in around in the middle of my erased area like this. There's a couple ways to do this. I can, because all of this is all on the same layer, I need to be careful. So I can tap the little dot, and then I can just 3-finger swipe down and cut and paste. And that just pasted that little section on its own layer. And now I can come back down and erase in a easier way to erase, right? So I can be very careful not to erase around my other areas. I'm just going to erase around this and then turn my little nut back on. That's a very muddy color. I think I might change the color of that later, and I'll show you an easy way to do that. All right, so I'm going to do that with each one, but I'm going to do it all at the same time. So I'm going to do my edge erasing around all of them. So go to the eraser, go to Streaky Pastel, and I'm going to do some short strokes, just getting a border of an erased border. You can make these quite rough if you want really edgy lines around it. You can change the brush size if you need to. All right, so I have all of those selected. I'm going to grab the selection tool. I mean erase. I have all of them erased. And I am going to come in and grab each one. Tap the little circle. If you can't see through your mask here, you can change the visibility of your mask. So you can go to your wrench icon, press, and change your selection mask visibility so you can see better. And then keep going, keep selecting, tapping the little dot at the end to close your selection. And I'm not getting super close to my erased edge because I don't want that line of my selection tool to be what we see. All right, so you can go ahead and 3-finger swipe down and cut and paste just like we did on this one, or you can tap invert. Right now these centers are all selected, and I want to invert the selection so that all of these outer areas are selected. And now I can just tap this arrow and slide this whole thing right off. Since we did this the other way, it's on a separate layer, and I'm just gonna merge that back down. All right, here's a good time to make some color changes. So if you alpha lock, so if you swipe right, you can see the little grid and alpha lock, or you could tap it and tap alpha lock. Then the only places where color is going to get added is where there are already pixels. And so where the texture is showing, that is where there's less and more pixels, like opacity of pixels of color on the layers, on that layer, and that will maintain that look. So if you say go to this purple, and if you look really closely up here, I can just go on my side stick pastel, I can color in quite a lot, and it's maintaining all that texture that I already had. So that's the really nice thing about Alpha Lock. So I like that purple. I may switch to some blue up here too. And I might add a little blue to this. Get rid of the pink. I wasn't a fan of that pink up there. Maybe a little of this brighter orange. Yeah, those two look too similar, so I'm going to undo and maybe get some red on here. Maybe red over here with the blue. That's pretty. Maybe a little purple instead of green. I can also smudge, and with Alpha Lock on, it's all just going to stay in those areas that there's already pixels of color. So spend some time figuring out if you want to make any changes and what your final colors are going to be for the nut. Now we're going to go to a layer above it, and we're going to do the same thing for the caps. So now I'm switching to some darks, like maybe the dark red. I know you don't have this palette, but just so you see what I'm thinking, dark browns and things like that. So same idea, kind of being messy with my colors. I'm on a different layer, so that part doesn't matter if I'm overlapping. Do I want my caps to all have similar colors? I'm not sure. I'll just kind of play around here. Maybe get some red in on some of them. Not that one. I can also make adjustments to these actual colors. Go a little darker. Grab this blue and go a little darker. Do any smudging that you want to do. I think I'm not going to do too much smudging on this. I am thinking about just keeping things dark, very, very dark, because my little details are going to be in a lighter color. All right, and now I'm going to do the same thing, and I'll fast forward. I'm going to do the same thing with erasing. So I'm on the side stick, or the streaky pastel for erasing. And the part to be a little bit careful of is the stem. So I'm going to turn my opacity back up on my sketch layer and just zoom in on a stem here. Just like we did with the tip down here, I'm just going to swoop in like this on both sides of the stem and maybe the top like that. So just being a little bit careful around the stems. I'll go ahead and fast forward as I make a nice erased track around all of my caps. And now the selection. Tap invert, grab it with the arrow, and just take it right off the page there. Deselect. Ah, super cute. And let's turn our texture layers back on. So, oops, so we can really see what it's going to look like. Oh, I really like it now with the texture layers on. And I'm thinking that I might lighten this one and this one just because I want to have some more contrast. They're kind of all dark. So I'm going to come back down to that one and pick some colors. Maybe go to this purple and go a little lighter. And it's already alpha locked, so I can go on the side stick pastel and do some lighter purple on there. And maybe do some, oh, here's a light blue that's pretty. Ooh, I don't know if I like the light blue per se, but that lightened it up quite a bit. And then this one, maybe a lighter version of that red over there. That green is pretty. So you can spend a lot of time kind of working through that. This one looks rather bland, I think, too similar in the two color choices that I made. So I might go with a lighter yellow for part of it and get a little bit of variety on there. And maybe a darker patch, just a tiny darker patch. So this is stuff that you can really tweak for a long time, but we're gonna keep going. We're almost done. We need to do the leaves. So I didn't do the same method for the leaves. I only did the caps and the nuts with the method that we just did. For the leaves, I'm going to a fresh layer on top of everything, and I'm gonna stick with maybe, how about this green? And I used the streaky pastel. So I'm gonna test this green. I like that green, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick that green. You can change the color later, right? And for the stem itself, I'm gonna go rather small. This streaky pastel is very different at a small size, so don't go too small with it. And then I'm gonna just kind of get my nice rough edge with the pastel that we erased our edges with on all this other area, and do a rough color in. Now, if you decide to do multiple colors like this is looking like wool. I love it. If you decide to do multiple colors, you can alpha lock this and make changes to the colors just like I just did with all of these. So if you want to add a little yellow on here, so at this point, we can just focus on the base color. What do you want the base color to be? Just pick a color and you can entirely 100% change it later with alpha lock. My stem is a little thick down there, so I'm just going to erase part of it. Little baby oak leaves. Rough coloring in, I should say, just to add that texture. And that's all personal preference. If you don't want to use this brush, if you want a smoother look, you can definitely use like this one or this one, and one more. If you have a leaf that is going behind an acorn, you'll want to go on a layer that's under your acorns. And I'm going to be turning my sketch layer off so I can really make sure I'm happy with what I've got so far. Now I can stay on that layer for the line detail, but then if I decide to come back later and use alpha lock to change the color of these leaves, then that line also gets blown away. So I'm going to go to a new layer, and I think I'll go ahead and just go to maybe this wide pencil stroke on a small size. Pick a color, any color. How about just a darker green for me? I'm just going to add a little bit of rough line detail on my leaves. And since it is a separate layer, I'll show you why that is nice should you decide to change your leaf color. So let's say, oh, I think I want some yellow and red in those leaves. I'm going to come back to my leaf layer and alpha lock it and go to some yellow here, maybe a slightly brighter yellow, and go to my side stick pastel or something like that on a smaller size and just kind of tap on some little bit of yellow here and there. And because the line detail is on a separate layer, I can do this and it is not messing up those lines. So you can spend all the time you want doing that as well. And then if you change your leaf color and you don't like your line color anymore, then you can go to the line layer, which is right here. You should label it, and you can alpha lock that as well, and you can change the color of that as well. Right? So you can do those independently. You can also make that a clipping mask. For me, I didn't need it to be a clipping mask because I wasn't going off the edges with my lines. But if you made your line layer on a clipping mask, then you would have the ability to just kind of make your lines really willy-nilly, and they'll only show up where the leaf is. So that's kind of a nice thing. I just decided to go through and change some of the color of the line layer. All right, we're almost done. So I would pay attention to making sure you have some contrast with your leaf and your cap here, or wherever there's some overlap like that. And I'm going to go on a layer that's just above my cap and my nut. So just above. So for me, that is under the leaves. So I'm going to add a layer above the caps and the nuts. I think I'm going to add some red on this. I really like the red. Now I'm going to pick a color to do some doodling on top. So I am not going to do super bright white because that looks really, really, really glaringly bright. I'm going to do the streaky pastel on a small size and stick with the really great texture we've got going on here. So you can test it, maybe a bigger size. And my white is 39%, 39% for hue, 16% for saturation, 89% for brightness. If you're looking for a similar color, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my palette. And I'm liking that look. And now you just need to think about doodles. So the caps all kind of have a lot of texture on them. So I just did different ways of getting some texture. And the bases usually have a lot of striations, but you can just have fun doing any sort of doodle that you like. Or you can leave it just like this. If you're done, make sure you stamp it. I do have a YouTube video that shows you how to make a logo stamp for yourself and a watercolor stamp. So definitely go check those out, or you can just sign it, of course, with your handwriting on a different layer. I'm not using a clipping mask here because I want to be able to go outside of the lines a little bit. Oh, that is a little too wide. I'm going to go to a smaller size. Probably if I had my pencil more straight up and down, it would be okay. And then you can also decide if you want something darker. Again, I would not go to black, black, black when you want to do something that looks black. So you can have some fun doing some designs down on the nut itself as well. And this is all just personal choice, whatever you want to do. This is just a really fun look. And this is, in the beginning I talked about playing with the Posca pens and the Micron pens, adding what look like ink details to these designs. That's of course an option as well. And then I like to have the little edges sticking out. This would also be a good time to decide if you want any more details on the leaves as well. But that is your finished piece. I'm going to go to a new layer and find my signature logo stamp, find a fun color that's going to match all of this, and stamp it. And it's never too late to change some colors. You just make sure alpha lock is on. So here I have my cap here. I can turn on alpha lock. I can go back to the brush that I used initially, this side stick pastel, and I can add some more color. I was going to add red to this, but maybe just adding orange. And I don't have to smudge. I just kind of tapped and it made it nice and messy looking. I like that. And I can go through and add some of that to any of these caps that I want. All right, I hope you enjoyed that, and I can't wait to see what you make. Hopefully, you can find a way to share your work with me on social media. If you like my teaching and you want to learn more, I have dozens of classes and a membership that is a very good price that gives you instant access to all of my classes all at once, plus a lot of free brushes and palettes and all of that. And a private community. We have a lot of fun and we have live lessons, and I, of course, highly recommend it. And I hope to see you there. You can find the links to all of that in the description below. Happy fall!